Hello, and welcome to the Common Geeking Program. We are a book club podcast where each week, three of us are going to read up on a topic and then discuss it from our own geeky and nerdy perspectives. This week, I'm your host. My name is Jeff, and we will be discussing the 2009 film 9, appropriately.
2009.
You think that they were gonna release it in 2010 and they were like, oh, we gotta speed this shit up so that it's appropriate to the year?
I mean, if I remember correctly, the movie was released in theaters on September 9th, 2009. So it seemed
really?
like they had been planning to do that.
999?
Yeah.
Damn.
And then the movie was called 9.
You're totally right.
So...
I didn't even pick that up. I've been seeing September 9th everywhere, and yeah. I didn't even think about that, but
I'm not gonna lie, that is one of the things that initially made me want to see the movie more, because I was like, all right, clearly they really care about this.
They planned this shit, yeah. And so we're gonna be using this movie to kind of talk about stories that have a post-humanity element to them. So I am joined by two people, each of whom has selected a domain that they think will connect to our topic and theme this week, and they are...
Hey, it's your boy, Patty Ice. I'm talking about a video game called Eidolon, which is available on Steam.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, I'm Jahnavi, and I will be talking about the Kurt Vonnegut novel Galapagos.
Ooh, fancy. We got our movies, we got a game, we got a book. Look at all
we don't often have books, you know?
got some representation. Yeah, it's because none of us read.
Some learned individuals.
Well, I mean, previous on this podcast, I have said that I was illiterate, so I mean, I've been trying to improve.
Jahnavi, I just think that you are objectively the least illiterate out of our entire group, I think. Colin didn't even pick up a book till 5 years ago or some shit like that.
Yeah, but now he reads a book a month.
Yeah, well, just to make up for lost time.
I mean, this is a book club podcast, so I just wanted to...
that is true. We do have the word book in our intro.
So
we do have to read our thing to speak the intro.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to stay true to the brand, you know? The brand.
Perfect. So we're going to be summarizing our topic and domains, and then we're going to be openly discussing the frickin' topic of the week, which is 9, and the themes.
Our post-human revolution.
And then finally, we're going to close with a competitive rating section. Jesus Christ, we're off to a great start. I just can't say sentences out loud. A competitive rating section to determine which of these fools best contributed and whether or not today's topic was enjoyable. I'm just a little PSA for the listeners. I had a chicken quesadilla from Chipotle about half an hour ago, and I can hear my stomach a lot, and I don't know if that's picking up on my recording because my phone is basically sitting on my stomach. So
right, but the mic is up by your face, I think, right?
It's right here.
Yeah,
see what I'm saying? No, it's not. Oh. It's not going through this mic because that's just in the computer. Yeah. So if you happen to hear lots of gurglies, you know what that's from, and if you don't, then maybe we'll cut this out.
Also, if you do happen to hear the gurglies, the word for noises that your stomach makes is called borborygmus.
Interesting.
Yes.
Is that supposed to be he was making whatever... How do you say it? Borborygmus?
Borborygmus?
Borborygmus.
Miss, okay.
B-O-R-Y-G-M-U-S. Borborygmus.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is it he was borborygmusly walking down the street?
Is that a noun, or is it a...
Yeah, no, borborygmus is a noun, but if you want, you can make it whatever words you want, because...
Yo, bro, you wanna hand me some Toms on borborygmus right now?
You wanna go get borborygmus later?
Wanna get some food? It's gonna make me borborygmus so good. Alright, well, here we are, summarizing 9 in however fashion we see fit.
Okay.
So 9, as we stated earlier, hit theaters in September 9th, 2009. It was based on a short film that was made in 2005 by Shane Acker, who is also the director and writer of the film. Did you guys end up watching the original?
Yeah, I watched both.
Jahnavi? You too?
Yes, I did.
Nice. We're not, yeah, I don't know. I had them watch that just because I thought it was fun, but we might not talk about that a whole lot. So, 9 is a post-apocalyptic animated feature film. It stars Elijah Wood, is the main character who plays 9. So the movie starts with this little ragdoll guy who's about, I don't know, I'm gonna say like 4 or 5 inches tall, right? Just
pretty small, yeah.
Due to context clues and the things that they use. He wakes up in a room, and there's an old dead guy in there. And he can't speak, and he's looking around. He's like did I say ragdoll? They're like little ragdoll robot guys with little apertures for eyes. Pretty neat. And he's got the number 9 written on his back. And so there are, as one might expect, 9 of these guys. But we're introduced to the film with just him. And he walks around, and he eventually finds another one of them, 2, kind of wandering out in the wasteland. It's a pretty beat up place. Like the buildings are all falling apart. There's like bombshells everywhere, some dead bodies. It's pretty fucked up.
Yeah.
So when he meets 2, who he's a little bit older because he was made first, but also just like his personality, like he's voiced by an old man. 2 kind of explains to him what's up in the world a little bit before shit hits the fan. Gosh, I feel like I'm just all over the place. But so 2 kind of, does some stuff. What happens in the beginning of I fucking box. Just watched it. Yeah, okay. So 9 can't speak, first of all. Oh, and he's got this talisman that he picks up from the room that he was in with these 3 symbols on it. And so 2 is kind of telling him about the world and how you should just leave some stuff alone, but otherwise you can find things. And he picks up a voice box from like a doll or something, which means that there was a doll out there lying in the world that sounds like Elijah Wood, and I like that. That's kind of funny. And so he gives him his voice box, and he's about to... He notices that he's got this talisman, and he's like, oh, this shit's important. My friend is always drawing these symbols. And before he can explain more, this giant kind of feline robot creature shows up. He's got like...
The
Beast! Got like the skull of... Yeah, the Beast is what they call it. He's got the skull of like a tiger or something. I'm not sure.
Some cat.
Some cat, yeah. He kind of...
It's worth mentioning that all of these figures, like 2 and 9, they're all like somewhat small. Like they're supposed to be smaller than humans.
Yeah. They're like 4 or 5 inches tall.
Yeah, they're like they literally are like little rag dolls, like made of burlap. They're very cute. But it's literally just like a cat being vicious. Like a cat skeleton. It's pretty alarming.
I guess it could be the size. I guess it could actually just be a cat skull. I'm not sure.
I think it is. Like,
it's got
from the
pretty
size.
big fangs, though.
Yeah.
It does look... I don't know. It's really hard to tell. Like,
yeah.
Obviously, with the way that it is animated, a lot of the camera angles are low, so it could artificially like inflate the size of the cat.
Well, I think it's pretty big, but it would probably be like, I don't know, maybe up to someone's knee is out.
A large dog, but with a cat skull.
Right. It moves sort of cat-like, but also like a little bit ape-like, and it's kind of cobbled together from various bits and parts. It's all very... The aesthetic of the movie is all kind of a little bit steampunky. And in this supposed world... The apocalypse is, gosh, I don't know. It seems like it happens in what time period? Like the 30s or the 40s?
I mean,
it's really hard to tell.
It does seem
I feel like
post-World War I from...
Yeah.
If the fucking Wikipedia has anything on that.
Just because everything's kind of like old-timey radio vibes, and like everything is very like war propaganda. So kind of like post World War One or post World War Two, but it seems a little earlier than that.
The reason like I hesitate from saying like World War Two is that there didn't seem to be as much of like the wild aircraft thing going on. Like I think I saw more of like I don't know, something about the aesthetic was like, for some reason it made me think it was more post World War One. Or an alternate World War One in which everything was eradicated, especially like the gas reference.
Yeah,
like, I think that was more of a World War One thing, but I mean, it is a different universe than ours.
I mean, they used plenty of gas in World War II as well, but
that's a fair point.
It's really hard to tell.
Yeah, it is hard to tell.
I think based on how advanced the technology was at the time, I would think that it would be closer to World War II.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think you would necessarily be able to do a lot of the experiments that the doctor was doing necessarily until we had like atomic power and whatnot.
Anyway, so this creature is kind of hunting them down, and 9 goes and hides, and 2 kind of distracts the creature, and the beast ends up taking 2. So, and 9 gets kind of fucked up, but he's ultimately okay, and he escapes, and then the beast leaves with 2. So 9's kind of wandering out into the wilderness, and then he sort of passes out, and then he's found by 5.
John C. Reilly.
Yeah, I 100% did not realize that John C. Reilly voiced 5 until I saw John C. Reilly in the credits, and I was like, who did he play? There's only like 6 characters in this movie.
You didn't know that today, or like the first time you saw it?
Today, I didn't realize it. Yeah.
The more you know.
I've seen this movie a few times, but I think I might have, the last time I saw this movie might have been before I knew who John C. Reilly was. So it's been a bit.
Gotcha.
So yeah, he's found by 5, and 5 and 1 and 8 all kind of, and 6 kind of live in this little collective together, where 1 is sort of like this super dictatory, my way or the highway type leader who's kind of oppressing the rest of them and using
Ruled
8 to kind
fear.
Yeah, exactly. He uses 8 to kind of be his muscle and enforce him, because 8's just like a big dumb muscle boy. And 5 is kind of like this, he's got one eye and he's kind of timid, but he's mostly like, the same kind of build and stuff as 9 is. And then 6 is super crazy, obvious Tim Burton contribution into the movie. He's got like little, what do you call them? Like his fingertips are like the ends of ink pens.
Mm-hmm.
So he like draws, and he's got like scraggly hair. So we're kind of introduced to the scenario here where upon finding 9, 1 kind of yells at 5 for going out to get him in the world, because they're supposed to be hiding from the beasts and doing nothing else. They don't want to bring the beasts back to them. All
about that short-term survival, like ride it out until the beast is dead, and then like
exactly.
worry about what to do. Yeah.
Yeah. And so 1 kind of explains to 9 the whole situation that they're in, that when the rest of them sort of awoke in the world, it was during the war, and there's like kind of a shot of like, the people and the robots fighting each other, which, surprise, that's what was happening during the war, was the robots versus the people, which gets explained a little bit later. But so they're all just trying to survive, and then there's like a shot of one of the robots sends out this gas bomb, and the gas starts going, and then we see 2 walking around, and it doesn't affect him because they're, they don't have lungs. They're little robot sack boys.
Mm-hmm. Robot sack boys.
Yeah. They should make skins in Little Big Planet to be the characters in 9.
I think
it's just it's so obvious.
Maybe they have, or like maybe they considered doing it, but then the movie wasn't like popular enough to work out. I don't know.
Or what they could do is launch a bunch of toys called the Robot Sack Boys.
Rock'em Sock'em Sack Boys.
So anyway, all the humans died off from the gas basically, and our cast of little boys survived. Basically, 1 and 9 are kind of butting heads because 9 is like searching for answers and he wants to go help too, and 1 is like, well, no, we can't do anything. We have to just stay here. He's lost to us now. He's as good as gone. We don't want to get the rest of us killed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then, against 1's orders, 9 sort of convinces 5 that they should go look for 2, and they get this map together and they have some buddy time, and they're going to the factory where 9 saw the beast taking 2. And when they get there, they see the Beast fiddling with the talisman that Nine had, and he's like about to put it in this machine, but they're busy kind of rescuing 2, and then they make a noise, and the Beast is like, oh shit, the motherfuckers are here, and he goes and they have a little brawl, and then 7 shows up. She's got like a bird mask on, and she like runs up and she like has a little badass conflict with the Beast and ends up killing it. So then the movie's over. Then everything is happy, and that would have been the end of it.
But
so Nine,
imagine,
who's looking for his answers, he finds the talisman on the ground, and he sees where the Beast was about to put it. To be fair, they didn't see that that's what the Beast was about to do to it, but like the symbols on the talisman match up with this thing, and he's like, huh, what does this do?
Ooh.
And he puts the thing in the slot, and then 2 runs over, and is like, whoa, motherfucker! Probably
we don't even know
do
what that does.
And then what the talisman does is it activates the main antagonist of the film, which is the machine, which is this giant claw, one-eyed, grabby thing that wakes up, and as soon as the talisman opens up, it basically kills 2, like it sucks his soul into the machine, and then the machine wakes up, and then basically 1, 5, I keep calling them 1, 9, 5, and 7. This is gonna get real confusing.
I mean, at least it's like, I don't know. Do you think it's more confusing to have the characters be numbers?
No. I don't think it's more confusing, just for the sake of, like, describing what's going on. It's a little bit annoying to keep track of. Because
Anyway.
you'd be like, you'd be remembering and be like, oh yeah, that guy's based on a number, but they're all numbers,
Right.
Anyway, the 3 of them, they escape the machine, and, 7 and 5 are kind of like, dude, what the fuck? Because 9, they pretty much all their problems would have been solved, more or less, but 9 activated the machine by accident, and he kind of owns that, but, still, like, not great. So, in search for answers of how to stop this thing, they go to a library where they find 3 and 4, who are little twins, and I like their aesthetic a lot, because like after the first few times watching the movie, I realized that they're made out of gardening gloves.
Yeah.
Because I was just like, what's that weird flap on their back? And it's the other finger. Because, one of their arms are 2 of the fingers, and their legs were made from the other 2 fingers. And then they've got like the wrist going over their head, kind of like hoods. And they don't speak.
Like, I really like how they were, I think they were supposed to represent fireflies or look like fireflies. Because of how they'd flicker, and like the fingers sort of down their backs would look like wings. So they seemed very like flitty, insect-like. Like,
yeah, so they don't talk. They just kind of flitter their eyes at each other and like do little cute things.
Really cute.
They're cute.
Yeah.
They seem like the youngest ones there, even though they're the 3rd and 4th oldest ones there. But they've got this whole library set up where they've been doing like research on everything. So it's kind of revealed that 7 and 3 and 4 all were kind of sick of 1's bullshit, and they left. And
bye.
Yeah, so they were to 1 and 8. They were kind of as good as dead, but surprise, they're alive. So they go through some of their library research, and they find this thing about the machine and how it was made by the scientist guy, the one that Pat mentioned earlier.
Who was commissioned by the dictator.
Yeah. So there was the chancellor who commissioned, who wanted this machine to be made. And it's like this old-timey propaganda video. There's just like, oh, the machine is brought in for a new age of science, and he's gonna make machines of peace. And the image in the background is like him making a bunch of robots with Gatling guns coming out of their face. So I don't know how they really swung that one to the public.
So yeah, like eventually the machines go on to, instead of only killing the dictator's enemies, they decide that
the machines
proper course
turn
of
on the
action
peeps
is to destroy all human life on Earth, like period. So they just start gassing and killing, and it's nuts.
Yeah, so then, like,
I guess I didn't catch how the machine came to be, like, shut off in the first place.
Yeah, I don't think that's explained, really. Maybe the scientist did something. I'm a little bit confused by the timeline, because 1 definitely mentions, like, things them being there for years, But when all the gas went off in the flashback sequence, like the scientist must have survived because he made 9 at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So the scientist did survive because he put his soul into all of the
right. Yeah. So that's the
fucking-
kind of reveal that comes later, is that the scientist, he was the one who made the machine, but he made it just from his intellect. But the reason that it went all evil is because it lacked the human soul. So then he like used this black magic method with this talisman to split his soul into 9 parts and then put him in the ragdolls, and that's our characters. So a bunch of shit fucking ends up happening. They we can get into some details later if we end up talking about it, but basically 8, 5, 6 end up dying in the same way that 2 did. And then, it's like the entire movie is kind of this conflict with 9 and 1, where 1 is trying to play it safe and also, preserve what they have. And 9 is like, no, we got to stop this shit from happening and put an end to it. And then by the end of the movie, after they've all been sort of sacrificed, 9 figures out all the secrets of the talisman by going back and finding a message left to him by the professor or the doctor or whatever.
Why, throughout the movie, sort of, well, not throughout the movie, but when it becomes like, okay, we want to understand this talisman better, 6 leads them to be like, oh, hey, go to the source, and they take that to mean the talisman itself, that's hooked onto the giant bad boy AI, but the source was probably like, no, go to the scientist, because the scientist was the source of the...
Yeah, I'm wondering why... if the rest of them woke up in that room as well? Because 9 seemed to be the only one who knew about it at all.
Well, I'm assuming that the scientist was still alive for the rest of them, and he died creating 9.
Yeah.
So maybe he
Right, but maybe he did it in different places or something,
Yeah,
or because none of them
probably.
seemed to know anything about him, but they would have come to life while he was still alive.
I don't know, man. It's weird.
Or
yeah, it leaves some things up for the imagination, but ultimately, at the end of the movie, 9 comes up with this plan where he's gonna lure the beast to come take his soul, and then the rest of them can rip off the talisman to free the others who are their souls are all trapped inside. And then at the last minute, there's a great Chekhov's gun where earlier in the movie 1 is lecturing, and he's just like, yeah, I sent out 2 to die because he was looking for answers, because sometimes 1 needs to be sacrificed for the good of the many. And then at the end, he's kind of monologuing to himself at the end right before 9 sacrifices himself. And he's like, sometimes 1 must be sacrificed. And he goes and he pushes him out of the way.
Because I'm 1, get it? I'm 1.
Yeah, because that's his name.
Oh my god.
So basically, so 9, 7, 3, and 4 are the only ones alive at the end of the movie after they kill the beast, and then they release all of their souls into the ether, and they all have their goodbyes, and then their souls all float away, and then it starts raining, and then the last shot of the movie is the raindrops having little green boys in them. So maybe the world is given life again. Is perhaps the implication.
It's supposed to be like a world rebirth kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely it has a lot of familiar elements in it. Okay, you have a protagonist character who's carrying this light bulb torch to to the future. You have a religious popey archetype character that's representing rigid order and how things are supposed to be. So I mean, all of the parts of the soul are apparently evident of something, or
right.
They're supposed to be types of some kind that put
they all have
together
distinct
represent
personalities.
humanity.
They're not quite as specific as this person represents happiness and this person represents fear. But it's
it's not emotions.
They all have good personalities, but they definitely all have sort of driving emotions that kind of steer them.
Well, they have they have distinct roles. You have a historian archivist, you have a visionary in 6, you have the
6
the
is kind of
traditionalist authoritative religious figure that is very pope
you big beefy boy.
Yeah, and then you have a warrior
big beefy punch boy
in 7, and then since your protagonist is 9, I don't know. 9 seems to be the trickiest, but I think he's supposed to be a herald, a torchbearer person because of the whole like light bulb thing.
So he's Jesus.
I mean, well, kind of, because like this whole thing, like, okay, you had an apocalypse, you had like a cleanse of humanity, and now you have like the story of the rebirth of like the world. Yeah. So I mean, I do
9
think
is definitely. I feel like 9 is definitely like he does have some Jesus-y vibes, or he's kind of like, you know, ushering in the new age and enlightening and stuff like that. But
and I guess we should talk about the short film real quick, in that it's a lot more brief. The main antagonist in that one is just the Beast, and I think the only 2 ragdolls we see in terms of like corporeal form are 5 and 9.
Yeah, they're 5 and 9, but the character in the short 5 is kind of a mixture between 2 and 5 in the movie. Yeah. Like he acts like 2, but he's got one eye and is 5.
Yeah.
But he's like, they don't talk, but he's like kind of an older guy, which is how 1 and 2 were in the movie. So they kind of split that character into 2 and 5, but...
And then 9 spends the majority, like, he flashes back a little bit to tell us the backstory in his memory, but then at the same time, he's like...
He's setting up a trap for the Beast. Yeah.
So he lures the Beast into his, like, home, I would think that it is, and then it makes it seem like he's being cornered, whereas he actually lured the Beast into this trap where he, like, jumps over, knocks a book off of a shelf, which in turn... lowers the thing that the Beast is currently standing on, and he falls into a pit and gets impaled, supposedly.
Yeah. Which is like, there's a lot of that in the movie, too, of them sort of like impromptu setting up traps that just like immediately work exactly how they want. Like they'll like throw a string into some gears that are rotating, which will pull the robot up and crush them. And so there's a lot of like kind of amusing sort of like traps,
really wanted
booby
to
traps.
Home Alone for this, but that has humans in it, so I couldn't do it.
Yeah, it's really hard to swing Home Alone as a post-humanity film.
You could swing it as a post-morality film if you wanted. Just like the entire violent slapstick thing is, I don't know. Have you heard, like, small aside here, like, have you heard the whole thing about how the kid in Home Alone, like, grows up to be Jigsaw from, like...
I have heard that theory. That's really funny.
And I was just like, it makes too much sense. I can't.
It does make too much sense. And I'm totally here for fan theories like that. The ending of the short film is very similar to the ending of the real film, where they end up taking both halves of the talisman, putting them together, and then letting souls of previously assimilated...
instead of 5 of them, it's the other 8. He's the last one left in the short. Yeah.
He's like, he's doing like a Viking funeral for the scraps of burlap that he has left over from them. And
which in the short, actually, I think were them, because the Beast was like wearing them as a fucking, like as a pelt. He had like stitched their bodies together. But whereas in the movie, I think it was just whatever they had on hand. But
and this seems to like sort of support the like characters as symbols idea. It's like the short seemed to be telling a different version of how like humanity's rebirthed.
Yeah.
Like there's a different kind of there's a different narrative there that like sort of shows the same thing of like, how do we get to the point where all of these like this release happens?
Right. Like there's a lot more plot in the movie, but like the vibe is sort of like a similar kind of thing that it's focusing on. Well, that's a good summary. I think that probably cut out some of the minutia of explaining the beginning part of it. All right, I think we should move on to the domains, where my friends can talk about some stuff.
Swag.
All right, Pat. So we're gonna go over the and Jahnavi. We're gonna go to the domains now. Gosh, they really just took out all of that. Am I like not looking at the right document?
I have no idea.
There's like no reads for anything anymore. Which I guess is fine.
You gotta wing it.
All right, Patty Cakes. Tell me what you brought. What is this Eidolon shit? How does it relate?
Eidolon, a very not well-known video game.
Can confirm. Did not know it.
Yeah, so it's on Steam, and I got it as part of a Humble Bundle. And I was like, whatever, I'll just install it, try it out. It is an open-world, first-person survival game that takes place in the like wooded areas around Seattle and like northwestern Washington. And you're alone. Like, there's no other humans whatsoever. You don't even know who the fuck you are, first and foremost. You could be a human, you could not be a human.
What does the character look like?
You can't see, because it's a first-person game.
Oh, it's okay, I see what you're saying.
When will your reflection show who the fuck you are inside?
You're just going through this very beautifully rendered, it's not like realistically rendered or anything, like it's an indie game, so the art's not realistic, but it is still very pretty, and you're going through all this area. You have to survive, meaning like you need to provide food for yourself, shelter. If you get injured, you have to find a way to heal yourself and whatever, but as you're walking through, you start finding weird clues as to what happened. So you end up finding out that you're in a post-apocalyptic area around Western Washington. It's not clear if it extends to the entire rest of the world, but you really only know that there are a couple surviving cities.
The other states are all fine. It's just Washington that got fucked up.
I think that
and nobody
surviving
noticed.
cities end up being in like fucking
Kansas.
No, Australia.
Oh, okay.
I guess I'll run through the plot as Wikipedia describes it just to make sure I don't miss anything. But Eidolon takes place approximately in the year 2400, according to the website. And you find out that through all these documents and images that you collect based on some beacons that like kind of guide you through the game, there was an earthquake in 2031 that ended up flooding Seattle, but it also exposed a new mineral that was discovered to make humans nearly immortal while either ingesting it or near it. But the
emphasis on the nearly.
Humanity decided that they were going to build these beacons called Eidolons out of this mineral, and anybody within a certain radius of the beacon would become immortal. But then as time went on and people spent more and more time in the influence of this mineral, they became dependent on it. So every time they were lacking this mineral, they would go through fatal withdrawal symptoms. All the people who lived out in the wilderness went through normal life cycles and whatnot, but they just didn't produce enough like future generations in order to keep humanity alive. So within this same time span, there was a new race of people that kind of mutated from humans and became, they essentially got the effects of the beacons innately, so they didn't need the mineral anymore. They became like immortality. They got immortality. They became superhumans with like flight and different abilities. So then there was a conflict between all the people who were normal humans and the new race, which was called the Senin. And then that went through a social breakdown where society collapsed and people started dying because the Senin were destroying beacons so that they could live on and humanity would die off because they were dependent on it and they'd go through withdrawal. So that period was known as the Fall. And then I guess it's not in Australia that they're surviving. It's in a place called Victoria, which I think is in Washington, actually. But that survived only as a secluded police state. So all of Washington is pretty much collapsed at this point, and you wake up not knowing what happened. You find a series of letters, mostly from this one specific character named Tria, and she came to Washington long after the Fall in search of a cure for the beacon dependence to kind of help out the world's remaining cities so that she could essentially end the conflict between the two races and humanity could live on without needing the beacons and all that jazz. So through the game, you find out that the cure for this beacon dependence was actually in Victoria, Washington the entire time, but you don't know if it actually worked or anything. So the gameplay is really, you're just going around collecting clues. The way the story unfolds is really nice because it doesn't tell you straight up what's happening. You have to go through the entire game in order to really get the whole picture.
Mm-hmm.
But if you ever get lost, there is a built-in help feature that like the beacons will glow toward the direction that you need to go. And it'll help you out by finding the next clue that way. And that's really it. Like, there are no antagonists necessarily to you as a person. You run into like normal survival situations where like you need food and water and all that, but it's a very relaxing, very calm game that the low poly visuals actually make it even prettier. Like, I stopped playing the game for like 10-minute intervals just to explore and see all the cool nature vibes. The night sky is so detailed with like stars and everything like that. It was a very, very pretty game and just like a ridiculously relaxing situation. So that's pretty much the entire game. I don't know how much time I have left, but...
All right. I think with that, we're going to move on to Jahnavi.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, Jahnavi, my friend.
Mm-hmm.
What? Tell me what you got. This book that you read like a nerd. What's that all about?
Cool. So I read the book Galapagos by Kurt Vonnegut. In case all y'all or our listeners are not familiar with Vonnegut, one of the recurring characters in his book is Kilgore Trout, who is like
That's a nice
this sort
Murder
like
fish?
Hmm?
Murder fish?
Murder fish? I mean, I guess so. I'm not sure. I don't remember why he was named what he was named. But anyway, he, like, Kilgore Trout is this, like, science fiction writer who, sort of traverses, like, time and space a lot. And and it is through the lens of Leon Trout that this novel is told through. Leon Trout is, a spooky ghost living in the ship that's carrying all of these people to the Galapagos. So there's, a number of characters who sort of like escape on a cruise ship to the Galapagos when there's this sort of like, pandemic of like a fertility killing virus that sort of gets the rest of mankind. But the people on this ship like make it, and they end up on the largest of one of the Galapagos Islands. And sort of it's telling this like story of the survivors, and then Leon sort of like watching them and like making asides. And then throughout the book, there's sort of like a bunch of quotes from famous authors like T.S. Eliot. And basically it's
even more books.
Through the course of the book, like through the course of like the million years that the ghost of Leon Trout is watching, like what happens to these people, is that they evolve into like almost like seal-like things with because the people who do the best at surviving on the island are the ones that are good at swimming. And he's just like, oh. And to like, from the satirical perspective of the book, this is like a good thing because most of humanity's problems is caused by overlarge brains. And you'd just be happier.
Being seals.
Yeah. And not being just like seals that were good at catching fish and stuff. So
Leon's just like, well, that took a turn.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of like funny quotes, like potential terrorist is a terrorist. And let's see, mere opinions, in fact, were as likely to govern people's actions as hard evidence, and were subject to sudden reversals as hard evidence could never be. And just a lot of like very Vonnegut, like, humans would just be happier if they were less like, if they had like less of a 3-kilogram brain. That's a lot of like room to come up with all these like weird ass things that just cause problems.
So the reason that it's on the Galapagos Island is are the Galapagos Islands where the finch?
Yeah, like that.
Yes.
That was the like Charles Darwin is quoted also like. It's it's sort of like Kurt Vonnegut's like take on evolution, and I like.
So are we thinking that on the other Galapagos Islands there are other humans that evolved quite differently into not seal things, or is that not really addressed? Or
I don't think that happens because it's like heavily implied that the only humans left in the world are these like survivors on this island.
Oh, okay.
Oh, here's another one that I found in my notes. Said. Just about every adult human being back then had a brain weighing about 3 kilograms. There was no end to the evil schemes that a thought machine that oversized couldn't imagine and execute. So I raise this question. Although there is nobody around to answer it, can it be doubted that the 3-kilogram brains were once nearly fatal defects in the evolution of the human race? So it's just like Kurt Vonnegut's like fiction but / expose on how being too intelligent just causes problems, and it's not actually an evolutionary like end game. Which is sort of like when we brought up this topic of posthumanism, there are a bunch of science fiction authors that sort of deal with like the other side of this of like, oh yeah, like we're gonna get more intelligent, we're gonna have all these new abilities, we're gonna do this and do that, and Kurt Vonnegut's like, nah. Just causes problems.
We're just gonna turn into seals.
Exactly. So I thought this was kind of an interesting like take to like of like what post-human means. Like, in a post-human world, like, just self-sustaining, like, human civilization, or, like, all of these things that are valuable in, like, an exclusively human context don't really matter anymore. And what you need to succeed is, in fact, different. And then also, like, talking about, like, well, what do you need to know about, like, the world in this environment? You're just trying to survive. And if you're just trying to survive, like, nobody cares if you know, like, quantum whatever. Like, nobody cares if, like, you're well informed about things that are dead now. Like, what matters is if you can catch some motherfucking fish. So,
So was his point, I guess, to kind of satire I don't want to say, like, the overvaluation of education and whatnot, like, where to the point that people start doing things that aren't necessarily valuable to society? Or is it like,
or is it just kind of a farce?
Well, it's partly kind of a farce, but also just kind of trying to do, like, a humility check on a lot of these, like... Because the book was published in, I want to say, 1985, and a lot of science fiction, I think, at the time, or a lot of literature, was aspirational. Like, what can we do with all this technology? Like, what can we do with all of this, like, new information that we're getting because of these advances? But at the same time, they haven't addressed, like, the things like, oh, well, long-term social problems that have been around, like, since we've been around, like, you know, famine and war and all of that. Like, has there been any progress in addressing those things? Or, like, because, like, the human advantage is, like, okay, like, cooperation with, like, one another and the ability to sort of coordinate these, like, large-scale things. And then, you know, the intellectual aspect of it, like curiosity and discovery and, like, preservation of knowledge through generations and stuff like that. And then so when all of that is deemed irrelevant, like, what are you left with? And then if you take the, like, evolutionary utility perspective of, like, oh, well, Darwin, like, you wouldn't get necessarily humans who would evolve into the future, who are, like, maintaining all of that, especially since, like, Vonnegut is a cynical boy. He, you know, is always talking about, or, like, referencing, like, human foibles and problems. So it's basically just kind of, it is mostly meant to be a satire, but I do think that it's an interesting sort of counterpoint to, a lot of other things that are, like, oh, post-apocalyptic and bleak. It's just like it's supposed to be a happy ending that humans evolve away from their overlarge brains.
Sort of like a bittersweet kind of thing, where it's just like happy for them, but for us as the humans to supposedly turn into these seals does not sound so great.
Right, like it doesn't sound great to us because of all of the context we have. Like, we have a completely different set of priorities. We have a completely different idea of what's valuable in life, and because of our overlarge brains, according to Vonnegut. So, but anyway, I would recommend the book. I think that it is, I think that it offers sort of, like, a perspective that is not really brought up that much. And I mean, I'm all for, like, Kurt Vonnegut's, like, Mark Twainy, but more cynical, like, sci-fi vibe. So anyway, that's why I wanted to talk about it, because it's, like, post-human, but in, like, a regression way, and not really a rebirth kind of way, like it is with 9, or a transhumanist, like, what can we do now with our potential kind of way. It's like, no, calm down. This is what's gonna happen. So,
alrighty.
Yeah.
Alright.
That's Galapagos.
Fun stuff. I think we should move on. I straight up, I was going in my mind to press, like, stop the temporary stopwatch of your domain, but I almost just accidentally hung up on you guys.
Oh, don't do that.
Because I had Skype open.
Silly Jeff Wee.
Jumping right into that fucking discussion, boy. He did not seriously take away that. We don't have a thing for the discussion anymore. Alright. Cool, guys. We are now in the discussion section of this podcast, where we're gonna break down some of our themes, some of those topics and domains, and talk about them a little bit. So I'm a bit of a loss here, because our though all focused on a central theme, our three things that we were talking about are quite diverse in the ways that this sort of like post-humanity thing is kind of talked about. Because in 9, it's sort of like they're the new species that takes over, and they have human characteristics, but perhaps will have some fewer flaws, or because like they have a human level of intelligence, but then are starting from the ground up in terms of society, and they don't like really have a way to reproduce at the end of it. Then, like, I guess it's, you know, the implication is sort of like, well, I mean, how bad could they really fuck it up? There's only 4 of them at the end of it, right? So
I mean, it's also sort of like you can read the story being like, oh, okay, like let's do a hard reset on the world. Like, everything's been destroyed pretty much except for these like soul pieces, and then
right, and
like part of these soul pieces are
really
gonna
is the point of the doctor researcher guy making them, right? Is to have some sort of continuation, because like even in his like little bit of dialogue, he's basically saying like, oh, humanity's done, like we're dead, this is the end of it, like, so you guys just have to kind of continue on. And it's not even like oh, you got to destroy the machine or whatever, because like what's left for the machine to destroy after humanity is gone, right? So it's
the puppets apparently.
Well, yeah, but if the puppets weren't there, then, you know, and there would have been nothing left to destroy. Like, boom, robots win. Big whoop. Yeah.
And I guess eventually the machine must have deteriorated, like, once it had destroyed everything.
Yeah.
So
maybe the doctor went and you know, though there were all the other machines, like the ones that the original machine had created, maybe he went and, like, stole the talisman from the machine and shut it down. Because it seemed to, like, need the talisman to, like, be alive, but from the description of it, it sounded like that wasn't made using that technology, right? Because it was made using his intellect, not the soul. So maybe, like, the machine was, like, trying to acquire a soul or something?
Well, yeah, because, like, that place where, like, the talisman, like, was on the machine, like, where it was set into the machine, like, that seemed intentional, at least. Like, perhaps the machine, like, I think, like, in the course of one of the scientist's narrations, it was like the machine lacked soul.
Yeah.
So there must have been an attempt by the scientist, at least, to try to, like, give it some,
and then it just didn't work.
Yeah, like, so there's a lot of, like, kind of occult stuff associated with that. Like, when they open this, like, when they're like, oh yeah, like, here's how you make your little homunculi, like, suck out part of your soul, put it into a doll.
Yeah, and, like, in the diagram, it's got, like, you know, the picture of him holding the mask over his face, but then the actual thing is, like, this kind of, like, root wig doll that is, like, patched together. So it's, like, it seems to be, like, an old magic or science.
Yeah, and then
but then the talisman itself is he probably built it, because it is kind of, like, techie.
Yeah. So it's, like, this fusing of, like, this ancient magic-y stuff with this, like, modern technology stuff. But then the themes of the story itself seem to, like, lean less science-y. Like, the story isn't necessarily asking questions about, like, what does this scientific discovery mean for, like, what are the implications of a scientific thing? It was more like, okay, like, I'm gonna put these archetype homunculi together to sort of, like all the present motivations this.
Of the like, all the motivations and, like, what's accomplished at the end of the film are all, like, much more spiritual than, like, actually tangibly relevant to, you know, to whatever's going on there with their society.
Like, it's still human centric, even though there are no, like, live humans in the course of the events of the story.
Which I think is kind of, it's an interesting sort of thing, and I think that, like, when looking at Eidolon, right, it probably focuses on that a little bit as well, because you don't really know what the main character is, but you're basically, like, though the game is not set in the story of the game is, like, is what you're looking for, right? So it's sort of like this character who you're playing as is viewing this story that is about humanity's, you know, eventual demise.
They're essentially playing, like, a future detective trying to solve a past crime.
Right. So it's kind of interesting
no real dog
that,
in the fight,
like,
but
there's, like, a bit of dramatic irony there in that, like, or dramatic irony from the perspective of the main character, because like he knows that at the end of it all this shit is going to happen, but like when you're actually going and viewing the story, like it wouldn't otherwise be evident as to like how it would have ended. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, I don't know. So it's kind of interesting because like it's taking, and I think that Galapagos does this too, is like it's taking these post-human things to basically like comment or study human conditions. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And like I guess, there's a lot of uncertainty throughout 9 of like what will happen now? Like this is already like post-apocalypse. So like something that's post-apocalypse and you have human-like but non-human sort of figures. And then even the way that like their dialogue is like sometimes, I don't know, it sometimes is still a little bit puppety. Like even though they are like individual characters, like a lot of the dialogue seems to be like kind of weighted in a way.
Yeah, no, I was thinking that like the entire story seems a little bit compressed, you know?
Yeah.
Like they'll have one sentence be like what could have easily been a scene, you know? Like when like 1 is saying like, oh, we have to go look at 6's art, right? To figure out what's going on. And 7 is just like, I'm not going back to 1. And then she like storms out and we're like, well, hold on, wait a minute. But it's like, but it like that kind of thing in another movie might bother me more than it does in this film, because it feels like very much just like kind of a compression of a longer story, which stylistically is kind of interesting at some points, you know? So it's like the characters get to develop and sort of, you know, show their personalities and kind of know each other faster than the amount of time that they actually spent together, which is kind of interesting. And like maybe that was an intentional thing, saying like, oh, they are already kind of know each other inherently since they are all from the same person. But it might have just been like a choice just to get the movie pushing along. But
I don't know. So like there does seem to be a lot of symbolism in the movie. Like when their first sort of like meeting place or sanctuary is a church, like an old church. And then their other sort of like, and then the other sort of like main place of old, other than where the machine is the library. So you have like kind of the church versus the library, which seems very like telling. And then you have that moment where the character is like, when the rest of them are sort of like figuring out, hey, how were we made? What's up with our origins?
How do we get rid of this giant beast dude?
1 is the one being like, no, that's dark magic. Like that's dark. The humans did this and like look where it got them. Like what, like we should just leave this all behind and like not worry about that.
For most of the movie he seems like just kind of an irrational asshole, but then like you do kind of get, he does make a good point every once in a while, you know? It's just like, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't pull it to quite that extreme, but he is kind of right. Like he's like clearly the character with the most resent of the humans, perhaps because he was, you know, I mean, it's not clear how much older he is than the other ones.
Well, he probably saw the most of them if he was the first one.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's like, it's not clear like what the gap was between all the other ones, because the way that the story tells it, it kind of seems like 1 through 8 were kind of simultaneously alive, and then 9 was years later made. But like, he does seem to be the one that has like the most resent towards humanity, and just being like, yeah, they left us with all of their fucking problems, and there's like really nothing that we have to do about it. So like, why are we responsible for this?
And even before he like sort of sacrifices himself to save 9, he's like we still like to the end, pretty much. He's like, this isn't our problem. Like we can literally figure out what to do after. But the other thing is that like just because I'm choosing through all the cues we have to just view the story symbolically, even when like initially early on, like 1 loses his cape. Like he needs to let go of the cape so that he can like continue on. And like, you know,
he's just like, you owe me a new cape.
Well, exactly. Like he's kind of effectively lost his authority and power, but he doesn't want to like he's still sort of stuck in that mindset or in that role. So I don't know. I think for that, at least for 1, it seems like very clear in the way in which he's supposed to be symbolic. And then depending on, I guess, how hard you want to take the symbolism hammer to the rest of the story, you've got, like, I think, as I said earlier, like 9 being like a torchbearer. And you have, I wonder what the one-eyed thing is all about. Like, you have all the evil monsters are like one-eyed. Like all of the
5 is one-eyed too.
Yeah,
right?
5 is one-eyed also.
Well, the cat isn't one-eyed, and the bird has like several eyes, and
well, the cat had like the one glowing red eye though.
Did it?
Yeah.
Oh, like on one of its sides.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and then same thing with like the dead baby head
thing. The baby head snake doll thing, yeah.
That was like literally the scariest thing I had ever seen in my life. At like when I went to see that in theaters to see 9.
The machine is being resourceful with all the things it has to make these horrible monstrosities to go hunt the rest of them with.
Yeah.
And it uses 2's body to be this like fucking siren-esque lure and to this giant snake creature whose head is like a baby doll that's like cracked open.
Yeah, like that baby doll head with the like one glowing eye that's like half gone with all of these fangs, and it's like I don't know, man. It's just a lot of scary things in one. It's
the
like, all right,
let's go. Is what they call it. Yeah, it's I enjoy it a lot.
Like if this had not been an animated movie and they had like tried to make that more realistic or CGI, this would have definitely been a rated R movie.
Yeah.
It might not have even like happened though, because didn't Tim Burton pick this up?
Yeah,
and, like, produce it?
Produced
I mean, like
it.
It was clearly meant to be like an animated movie from the get-go. I'm just saying, like, I'm still like even watching it again after, you know, like, I don't know, being like a person in my 20s and not like a sort of like young teenish person.
Yeah.
It was still like what?
I'm watching it again. I do like, this is probably one of my favorite movies. Like, I enjoy it a lot. But watching it again now, it made me question so much more, like, who the fuck that was the target audience for this film? Because it's like, it's clearly not aimed at children, because like it's pretty screwed up in a lot of the things, and for fuck's sake, more than half of the characters in the film die, and then like, but it's also like the plot is a little bit
like, I do think it's a highly symbolic
like,
plot. I don't think that this is like, this is not like a typical adventure story. Like, I think this is definitely, and there's definitely like a lot of like occult things in it. Like, you have like somebody infusing souls into dolls. Like, that is not necessarily like, and the movie doesn't treat that like it's this sort of weird, horrific thing. It seems more like, oh no, this is what had to happen so that
but it's
like
also
the civilization
weird too,
could
because
continue.
like the entire thing is saying like, yeah, humanity fucked up like real hard with this one, but then at the end, you know, suddenly the only thing that's like that makes the robots okay is because they have a human soul. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like it contends itself a little bit there, where it's like, you know, the like humanity, we all had souls, but yet someone still made this robot, and the Chancellor still existed and still started all these wars. But then like the human soul is like the redeeming feature of the ragdoll people, as opposed to the machine. So it's kind of like, I don't know, there's like an interesting aspect of it to it there. So it's like maybe suggesting that like humanity lost a bit of its soul as well.
Yeah, I think that for sure, but it's just kind of like, it's very clear of like, oh, the humans brought this on itself, and that humanity brought it on itself.
Right. So I mean, like, ultimately, like, all three of these stories are in some way commenting on like how they're all taking, when you break it down, pretty farcical concepts and saying like, oh, this is the ridiculous way that mankind is going to fucking destroy itself, right? Like in 9, right, it's presented as all very serious and as a real problem, but at the end of the day, it's like, you know, I think they knew what they were doing when they're like showing these propaganda films where it's saying like, they'll make machines of peace. Meanwhile, the visual in the propaganda film is like making a machine that has a fucking Gatling gun sticking out of it. It's just like making some comment like, oh yeah, like humanity is actually really stupid. Like they would probably fall for that, right? So it's like taking these sort of
the over large brains, you know, like
right. So
we have the ability to execute on these impulses.
You know, it's
that
like
we have
taking
in the first
these
place.
propaganda ideas and like, you know, the angry dictator who's just bloodthirsty for war and like blowing them way out of proportion, and then like, you know, even in Eidolon, right? Like, like the thing that does the human beings in is just like, oh, they're just like greedy for immortality, and then there ends up being like power struggles over that, right? Where it's just like, actually, like, I'm not sure how much of a proportion of society would choose to be immortal, you know?
And then also with, like, I think it was said in 9 that it was the machine itself that after being like, wait, people are just fucking it up. Time to take care of the problem. Time to, like, get rid of them all. So it's sort of like a darker and less nuanced version of what Vonnegut presented in Galapagos, which is like, okay, most of humanity's gone. There's a small population left to repopulate, and the best thing is for them to, you know, get rid of some of that brain poundage.
So I guess I'm curious, like in Eidolon, like how much of a commentary does the story that you find ultimately make about humanity?
I mean, the main commentary that the creator wanted to make was that humanity,
the world was probably better off without us.
No, not that the world's better off without us. It's just in general, humans are very transient and nature is very permanent. Whereas, like, if you looked, there's that old adage where if you look at a clock, the entire history of humans can fit, like, in less than a second.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's mostly about, like, when human conflict eventually tears itself apart, that the world will be no different whatsoever. Like, it might be better off without us, but at the same time, like, there are all these cities that are flooded now, and there are, at the very least, there are, like, fish and some deer, but there's not a whole lot else in terms of life. It's just, like, a lot of trees and shit, so.
I was just gonna say that even the imposition of, like, the idea of what is better or worse, we're still viewing through the lens of, like, what is better or worse from, like, our human perspective in the first place.
Right, whereas the nature is just sort of indifferent. Because it doesn't...
The way I interpreted the name of the game, whereas, like, if you look at the definition of Eidolon, it can be like a ghosty or
an idealism,
figure. Exactly. So that, like, humans are the Eidolons in that situation where our impact on the universe or the world is nothing more than, like, a ghost. You know? We can leave behind permanent structures and shit, but we can't leave anything of ourselves behind besides, like, bones.
Yeah, which, again, subject to decay. Pretty much just, like, gone.
In the general universal scheme of things.
So it's just, like, the idea of being a ghost, because even, like, Leon Trout is a ghost. He's the narrator of my thing.
Trout.
I don't know. I think there's something to that of, like, if we want to tell a story about, like, a post-human or, like, about places or speculate on, like, what happens when there's no more humanity, the kind of consciousness you need to form a narrative isn't even, like, a full person. It's a ghost. Like, it's a phantasm.
Like, I'm just wondering, do you think that they made that Leon and Kilgore, their last name Trout, and then had the human race to evolve into something that was really good at eating fish? Do you think that was, like...
Well, because Kilgore Trout is a character across a lot of stories.
Oh, okay.
So I don't think he necessarily did that for this purpose.
No.
But
he was probably just like, what's an eye-catching name? Kilgore Trout.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the story behind the trout is that he had a colleague whose last name was Sturgeon, and he thought that was really funny. So...
Just so many fish in the sea.
Yeah. On the surface level, the reason why I thought of Eidolon was mostly because it had mixed reviews, and 9 has mixed reviews as well. A lot of people didn't like it. I am indifferent about 9. I didn't think it was, like, bad, but I didn't think it was necessarily anything that I would go out of my way to watch again. But then, as I was researching it, I saw the thing about it starting out as a thesis project, and I remembered that the short story version of 9 was a college project as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I mean, I think
really cool
it was
parallel.
Like a UCLA film workshop
School of Design,
project. Yeah,
something like that. Yeah. So it's just cool to see, like, how the backgrounds of how things can start and become very similar in the end product, but vastly different at the same time.
Yeah, because like a lot, like the elements of the original short are definitely in there, and like the entire thing was just like this, you know, kind of interesting narrative about this little being that had thought so far ahead of this creature that it was able to like set up some elaborate trap, and like that happens like 5 or 6 times in the movie, but it's all within the context of this narrative that's very different than I think like whereas the original short was just kind of meant to be this little cerebral sort of, you know.
Yeah.
Right, you don't get a lot of the symbolism for sure that the main movie has, but I thought in general you could get the gist of the entire story of the full-length movie in the 10 minutes or so that the YouTube video had.
Yeah.
Like, you'd have to extrapolate a little bit on your own knowledge, but...
It's interesting just, like, looking at it from, like, what stayed and what changed, and...
Yeah.
Like, I think I've watched that movie a few times, and I've watched, like, the director's commentary, and I always, like, you know, it's just interesting to... like hear about all the decisions made, because like ultimately the main thing about the movie that's interesting is like the animation and the environment and like the like little subtle clues that are put together.
Do quite like the movie. That's mostly what they're like attracted to.
Yeah,
is that it is very unique, and it does occupy like a very unique slot in the media landscape we have.
Yeah,
of like, I mean, again,
just, like,
who is this movie for? People who are really into like both animation and like this particular like dark steampunky aesthetic that is like extremely creative in its own way, but is also like, what is this for? What? Who?
Right. Yeah. Because like, there's just so many weird little details that you notice watching it again. Just like, I enjoy how like there's an iterative process to like them. How like, you know, one is kind of like strapped together, and his head is just like, you know, tied together in a knot, and his hands are made out of just pieces of scrap metal that are like bolted together. Whereas when we get to 9, you know, he's a little bit more refined, right? Like he's got like.
Yeah, 2 makes a big deal out of it. He's like, "Oh, you're so well made." Like, look at your
irritates
like
me a little
wood.
bit because like he comments on like the copper working in his hands, and both 5 and 7 have like the exact same hands that he does. So that irritated me on like. But anyway, yeah, I think we should wrap up the discussion. Move on to the ratings.
Mm-hmm.
Colin just straight up does not post anymore, so I don't think I should mention that.
I think you have creative license to do whatever you want there.
Yeah, I'm just looking at what's in this actual read. If you want to have your own questions or comments read on the show, we make weekly posts on Facebook, which we don't, so I'm not going to read that.
Oh,
you can see those every other Friday. No, we sure can't. Likes and shares and comments. Okay, so, alright. So, before we move on to the rating section, I just want to mention that, we do have a raffle going on the podcast, kind of informally all the time, or formally. Well, we're not formal though, so I'm not gonna say we're formally doing it. You know what I'm saying? Like we're pretty chill with this shit. So if you like or share or comment on any of the posts that we make about the show, or, you know, like tweet them out to friends and stuff, then you are entered into a raffle where you get the opportunity to pick a topic for a future episode. And those episodes are super fun to do. Pat, you're doing one pretty soon, right?
Yep.
Or
and
slash.
I have not actually played the fucking game that I have to talk about, so.
It'll be a fun time. Sometimes that happens. I had to play
I mean, honestly,
Dota, so.
I feel like I should just be an impartial judge to a debate that Eddie and Time will have, but we'll see.
But sometimes that happens. You get to get some interesting discussion by being thrown curveballs. But yeah, so comment and interact with our shit, and maybe you'll get to be more interactive with our shit. That's basically how it works.
Please,
all right.
Please talk to us.
On to the fun times. Thank you guys for a very good discussion. We are now moving on to the rating section, where we're going to have each of these guys rate the topic on a scale from 1 to 5 OGs. I mean, I guess
1 to 5 OGs.
Oh, geez, yeah, 1 to 5 OGs. I mean, I guess I could just say like, no, because then what would we call them? Numbers, ragdolls? But there's 9 of them. This doesn't make any sense.
Call it earlier. Something boys.
the sack
Ragdoll
boys.
robot boys.
Ragdoll sack boys. But Okay, here's the thing. We'll do the dead ones because there were 5 of those at the end.
Yeah.
So
they made a little pentagram and everything.
Yeah. So
Dead
we're gonna have you
robot
guys
sack
rate
boys.
the topic on a scale from 1 to 5. Ghosts of
Dead robot sack boys.
Ragdoll Sack Boys. So, Pat, you want to start us off?
All right. Like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of this movie, and while I didn't think it was bad in any meaning of the word, I also didn't think it was great. So I'm gonna give it 3.5 dead robot sack babies boys out of 5.
Dead robot sack baby boys. Aw, it's the new My
That's
Little
fair
Pony.
enough. Yeah, it's like the kind of movie that like I can see the things with it where it's like you kind of have to be into the kind of shit that it is to really have anything there to grab onto. All right, Jahnavi?
Yeah, so I'm gonna give it a 4.
All right.
I can't give it a 5 just because I feel like in a movie so symbolic, I feel like it needs to make a stronger point, and it needs to have like a little bit of just a little bit of a neater ending. And like, okay, the movie ends and there's a clear end to like what they're doing, but I don't think that it does necessarily a good job of like.
Yeah, mostly things are a little bit inconsequential throughout the entire movie.
Yeah, like it doesn't necessarily like have the strong narrative perspective that I would expect from something in which every like character, to me at least, very clearly symbolic of something.
Right.
So I think that even though I like it and I think it's good, I think it's unique, and in a lot of ways my criticism of it is like one of the things that I think is unique about it. Like it's a different flavor of story that's not necessarily like very tied to like somebody's personal revelation or character growth, which is difficult to do in a movie and then still have like you care about the movie at the end. Like I wouldn't say that this is like one of those bad movies where you just have a flat character and a bunch of tropes thrown together, and then you're like, haha, what a bad movie. So I mean, I feel like it occupies a unique like space in the media spectrum that we have to choose from, of being like this animated movie which people associate with like being wholesome a lot of the time. and then this is this like, okay, like this occult flavored, like symbolic, somewhat adult, like fate of humanity, nature of humanity commentary.
Right. It's
so,
like it's pretty dark without being the way that animation is usually. Like sometimes animation can go dark, where it's like when animation goes dark, it feels the need to go like super fucking dark, and everyone is just like a cynical asshole. And so like there's hopey elements in the movie, but it's definitely like there's a lot of fucked up shit that happens. Sounds good. Now, going on to award a Gold Star Student Award to the person who I thought contributed best to this episode of the podcast. Gosh, I haven't thought about this. I mean, I guess I could just do the talisman, but that seems kind of lame. I don't know.
But it's like you could do his light bulb staff.
Light bulb staff's not that great.
Well, I tried.
I'll do the golden soul talisman thing, for lack of a better name. They just call it the talisman, but I feel like just calling this award the gold talisman is a little bit too vague, so we'll say the soul.
How about a baby
talisman.
head? Can we have a baby head?
Oh yeah, the golden seamstress baby head
the
murder
golden
snake thing.
Baby head
Would you rather that? You're right, talismans are so yesterday. Let's just give out baby heads instead. I mean, I feel like we could do that just to have somewhere in the record of this podcast a visual representation of that fucking monstrosity. So yeah, we'll do the golden seamstress monster robot thing.
Damn. Good luck making that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just take a screen capture of what it looks like in the movie.
And then just
you have to make it yourself.
Oh, I have to make it myself. You're setting up the new rules.
It's copyright infringement if you take a screenshot.
Oh, you're right. If I just take a screenshot, then our show won't be able to be witnessed by Europe anymore.
And we won't be able to monetize.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. That
or
Article 13
I guess it's more
shit.
just the United Kingdom, isn't it? Not Europe as a whole. But
yeah.
Anyway, I think that the golden murder death seamstress baby snake is gonna have to go to Jahnavi this week.
Why? Thank you.
Jahnavi just brought up a lot of fun stuff about like both her domain and the topic, and all the, you know, you picked up on a lot of the symbolic things that I thought were kind of fun about the movie, and probably really its strong points. So yeah, enjoy your murder snake.
Wow. You know, in another context, that would have come
will.
off as passive-aggressive. Enjoy your murder snake.
I mean, if it helps, I think that, like, probably the thing is not much larger than... So the sizes of things in this movie are a little bit inconsistent, right? Because, like, they're only, like, a few inches tall, but, like, a baby doll head would be much larger than it was, right? Than on that snake.
I mean, depends on how big the doll was. Like, because I'm thinking of, like, when they were all... Like, there's a flashback and a bunch of them were fitting under a helmet.
Yeah.
So I'm like, these
So
are
they're
really,
small.
like, quite small. Like a couple inches tall. So, like, if a baby head... I can see a baby head also being a couple inches tall if it's supposed to be, like, a newborn baby.
Yeah, if you had to...
Well, it was a doll. It wasn't...
Yeah.
If you had to make
a
me
newborn
guess,
baby
I'd say
doll,
that
like...
a newborn baby can't have a head bigger than, like, 5 inches.
Yeah, I guess that tracks.
Yeah. I mean, a newborn baby is essentially, like, the size of a fat Chipotle burrito. Like, newborn babies are not very, like, big.
You came up with that one fast.
I mean, no, my mom's an OBGYN. Like, I know a good...
So she compares things to burritos a lot?
You know, I think I'd rather have a burrito instead of a kid, you know?
I don't think you'd rather birth a burrito than a kid, but...
I would much rather birth a burrito than a kid. I can eat the fucking burrito.
Are you just trying to pull it back to the beginning of the podcast where I talked about my quesadilla from Chipotle?
All the kid does is nag.
And all the burrito does is burrito
Is
things.
get delicious.
But they both can
That's
they both can drip pretty gross brown stuff.
They can.
Well...
But I'd much rather have a burrito than a child. I'm going on record.
To eat or in general?
In general, but definitely like 100%.
Would you rather
From-
eat a newborn baby or keep a burrito?
I'm not going to answer
for
this
18
question.
years.
This is really not a
We
fair
just-
question.
yeah.
Like, if this was a Greek
let's go ahead
tragedy,
and-
then he could eat the baby, but he can't.
And
okay?
wrap this up.
It's not what we do here.
We'll leave you to consider that last lingering question. But for now, we're gonna wrap it up. So thank you guys for listening to the Common Geeking program. Again, my name is Jeff, and you can find me I've got an Instagram.
My name is Jeff.
Yeah, my name is Jeff. You can find me on Instagram at Things I Wish Existed. There's a dot between each word. And I have been joined by...
That was a really weak burp, but
Yeah, it
I'm
was.
Pat. You can find me on Twitter at Purerifery. That's it.
Yeah.
And...
I am Jahnavi. I'm also at Twitter at JKIR1.
Lovely.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks for listening to us talk.
Yeah. And be gone for half an hour. I'm sure that'll stay in the edit. Next week's episode will be hosted by...
I think it's me. So, yeah, we going to be talking about The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask,
Ooh.
which I have not played all of and will be subsequently not very knowledgeable, but the rest of the team will be super knowledgeable. So, as
Boy, does Chowder know
Chowder
about
described
The
it,
CGP research
As-
team.
as Chowder described it, the game is Groundhog Day, except Bill Murray is trying to prevent the apocalypse and everybody has depression. So,
Yo, that's actually a great summary, though.
yeah.
Well, why do we even need to do the episode now? Like,
I mean... Well, because
So
it's
if that
not a
sounds
book
interesting to
report,
you-
it's a discussion.
Yeah.
They have to have a
True.
discussion, Jeff.
And that topic was submitted by Riley Barnes. Is that right?
Yep.
Hi, Riley.
You couldn't fucking pick something easier for me there, bud?
Are you having
You're
a
right.
hard time
You're
playing
right.
it?
How dare Riley assume
I
that at
have
least
no
3 of the
access to an
people on this
N64
podcast
anymore,
have
like-
played
Oh,
Majora's
that's a bummer.
Mask.
You couldn't pick a game that I could still play?
Okay, next
right,
time
well-
we will make available the platforms that we have access to. I guess.
No, I'm just gonna watch people play it on YouTube or something.
Yo. All right.
Word. Alright, well, tune in next Friday. No, next Friday.
Yeah, 2 Fridays from now.
Groundhog Day.
Yeah, on Groundhog Day. That's just 100% not true. Because Groundhog Day is already passed. Hasn't
Yes,
it?
it has.
When is Groundhog Day?
February.
It's
Yeah,
yesterday
we're
and today
We're
and
all
tomorrow.
past February. February is a thing of the past. I'm just going to keep saying variations of that sentence to stall so that I can open up the schedule and find out when that episode actually airs. Because all of my tabs closed when I restarted my computer because the internet crashed. Still loading. Work with me. Work with me.
You're
internet.
killing me, dude.
I'm killing me. I'm dying right now.
I am 45 minutes late to cook my chicken.
That episode will air on...
It'll be a well-marinated chicken.
The 10th of May, which is 2 Fridays from today. Gosh, now I gotta get back to the other thing. Man, the internet just fucks with
just say
me.
hi, thanks, bye.
Hi, thanks, bye. Alright, so be sure to tune in 2 Fridays from now on the 10th of May. And thank you for listening, subscribing, sharing everything, and we will talk to you... Nope, no we won't. He just didn't change that. He said 2 weeks from today, but at this end of it still says we'll talk to you next week. Alright, well,
we can still talk to him next week.
We're just going to talk to you. We just won't record it.
Exactly.
Y'all this is a tradition to just give Colin shit every time.
He makes stupid fucking guides, yeah.
Well, it's tradition for Colin to do things that make people want to give him shit for it.
Okay.
If Colin were just better at living, we wouldn't give him so much shit.
All right.
We were able to maintain quite a non-anti-Colin podcast till right there at the end. We had to throw it in there a little bit. He's editing, so he can just edit in a small clip of him crying right before we go into the credits of this show.
Oh my god.
All right.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
This episode of the Common Geeking Program is hosted by Jeff Leavitt, joined by Patrick Brem and Jahnavi Iyer. This episode is sponsored by My Tears and Sadness at the latest insult against my person and hard work hurled against me. I sound composed, but tears are streaming down my face. The podcast is created and produced by Colin, Ketchen, and Jeff Leavitt, with this episode edited by me, Colin, featuring original music also by me. In 2 weeks, we should have 2 episodes for you, one about The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, and another of the Common Briefing Program recapping geek news for the month of April. April's a big month, let's see how that goes. In the meantime, I wish you well, and thank you for listening to this.
Oh, speaking of that, I was at an ice cream place last night, and this dude behind me
was just like Borborygmissing all over the place.
He was like, I want to get peppermint ice cream, but it's going to give me heartburn. I'm like, how the fuck does ice cream give you heartburn?
That's a good question.
I feel bad for that guy.
What is heartburn like actually?
Maybe
like,
he feels
something to do with your acid in your stomach. Like,
yeah.
I would think that eating acidic foods would fuck with it more than eating ice cream would.
Well, was it the ice cream or was it the peppermint?
No, specifically just the peppermint. And I was just like, I don't think there's like
maybe
I
I
wouldn't think of peppermint as being terribly acidic, but
yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it just fucks with the chemistry.
If we have any doctors who listen to this podcast,
please let us know
and tell us why.
Oh, I could ask my friend Steven. He's in med school.
Yeah,
ask him right now.
Steven Pow. Pow.
Pow Pow. That's
and
what
I
we
also
call him.
learned that the Facebook comment section is a breeding ground for stupidity.
Oh,
in that
it has not evolved since.
I mean, it was mostly just last night I was looking at it, and there was a math question, because there are always fucking math questions nowadays. And the equation was 5 minus 5 times 5 plus 5.
Mm-hmm.
So normal people are like, all right, I multiply the 5s together, and then
every
they do the rest.
fucking time someone posts one of those things, there's like 1,000 fucking comments that are just like drastically incorrect numbers.
Right. So in said comment section, as I knew in my brain that it was negative 15.
What was the thing again? What was the equation?
5 minus 5 times 5 plus 5.
5 minus 5 times 5 plus 5.
0 parentheses in the entire equation.
So
you do the multiplication first,
right,
which is 25.
So 20
5 minus 25.
Plus 5, negative 15. Yeah,
correct.
That sounds right.
So many people in the comments are just like, there are no parentheses in the equation, therefore you don't use PEMDAS. And I'm like,
what?
That's not...
All right, that's not how that works. A,
parentheses
B,
are
no
like
fucking...
circumventing the rule, not enforcing it. Like,
Like, do they think that you can't use PEMDAS on any equation that doesn't have parentheses?
They're gonna have a
exponents,
bad
Like,
time.
if there were just two
division,
parentheses,
addition,
not around
and
any
subtraction.
numbers, like, just behind the
Yeah.
equation, then be like, oh, see
Exactly.
that because the parentheses are there, you gotta multiply first.
Here,
Like, literally, I'll just add a 0 in parentheses to the 14th power
Hey,
minus
what
a
the fuck
billion,
do they
like,
think
whatever.
that the P in that stands for? It stands
don't-
for parentheses.
I don't know, dude.
it stands.
It makes no sense.
I don't know. Here at Common Geeking Program, we encourage you to stay in school and to apply the math that you learned in middle school.
The thing that kills me
Otherwise,
is
you're gonna look
life.
dumb on
Same-
Facebook.
They are the same motherfuckers who will complain about young people not knowing how to do basic shit, like do math.
What
without a
kills me
calculator,
is the
and they
peop-
can't
like-
fucking do it.
People feel the need to prove themselves by even answering this question in the first place on like a Facebook chat, and then they'll get it wrong. Like, you have you have access to the internet. You could double check
Yep.
yourself. You could be like, "Oh, I think I figured it out, but maybe I should just check before I post and brag about how intelligent I am." But no, the gall of these people.
The audacity.
That's
mean,
funny
this
because that's
is
what you're
an
using to record. Oh, I
interesting,
got an answer.
This is an
Steven
interesting.
says, mint causes the valve between your stomach and esophagus to be more spastic and let more
Interesting.
stomach acid past it. Ergo, heartburn. That is the same case with after dinner mints. They increase burping and also stomach acid passage into the esophagus. Overeating acts similarly, but by the increased pressure in the stomach. Neat.
Interesting.
Thanks, Steven.
Thanks, Steve.
I'll tell him I'll just say Pat says thanks, and he'll be like, "Who's Pat?" And then I won't answer him.
Patty ice cream thanks you.
Yeah, he can't be Patty Peppermint Ice official now because it's
No.
going to risk him giving heartburn. All right, well that was quite the aside. I enjoyed it, but I think we should probably move on to the podcast.
Probably.
All right, summary time. Isn't there a read for the summary anymore? Is there not a read for the summary anymore? All right, well, I don't see one, so.
I mean, you're the co-creator here. Let's.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't read the fucking script.